in the support of translations of the Kasai. So I'll talk about this a little bit later. So it's on you, Sheikh.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, family. We are going to start, as always, with the 4 short surahs, beginning with our Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. We're going to start with our Fatiha. I'm going to read it in English, then I'm going to do it 4 times and do the same for the other 4 short surahs. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, the beneficent, the most merciful, the master of the day of judgment in which we now live. To you alone do we worship, and to you alone do we ask for assistance. Guide us to the straight path, the path upon whom you have bestowed grace, and not the path of those who've earned your anger, or those who have gone astray after they have heard thy divine word and teachings. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladina an'amta alayhim, ghayru maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin. Ameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladina an'amta alayhim, ghayru maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin. Ameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladina an'amta alayhim, ghayru maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin. Ameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladina an'amta alayhim, ghayru maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin. Ameen. Surat al-Ikhlas. Say, He, Allah, is one. Allah is the eternal. He neither begets not, nor was he begotten, and there is none like unto him. There is none like unto thee. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Surat al-Falaq, the daybreak. I seek refuge with the Lord of the dawn from the mischief of created things, from the mischief of darkness as it spreads, from the mischief of those who practice secret arts, from the mischief of the envious one when he envies and practices envy. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kulaudu Virapo Falak, Min Shari Mahalak, Wamin Shari Gasagini Dawakab, Wamin Shari Napatatapilukad, Wamin Shari Hasadini Dahasad. Bismillah Rahim. Kulaudu Virapo Falak, Min Shari Mahalak, Wamin Shari Gasagini Dawakab, Wamin Shari Napatatapilukad, Wamin Shari Hasadini Dahasad. Bismillah Rahim. Kulaud Rapo Falak, Min Shari Mahalak, Wamin Shari Gasakini Dawakab, Wamin Shari Nafatatapilukat, Wamin Shari Hasadini Dahasad. Bismillah Rahim. Kulaud Rapo Falak, Min Shari Mahalak, Wamin Shari Gasakini Dawakab, Wamin Shari Nafatatapilukat, Wamin Shari Hasadin Ida Hasad. Saratul Nas, mankind. I seek refuge in the Lord of mankind, the sovereign of mankind, the source of mankind, from the evil of the retreating whisperer, who whispers evil into the breast of mankind, and from among the jinn and mankind. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kudaudu Rabban Nas, Maliki Nas, Ilahi Nas, Min Shari Wasil Khanas, Alladhi was Wisufi Sadurin Nas, Min al Janati wa Nas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kudaudu Rabban Nas, Maliki Nas, Ilahi Nas, Min Shari Wasil Khanas, Alladhi was Wisufi Sadurin Nas, Min al Janati wa Nas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kudaudu Rabban Nas, Maliki Nas, Ilahi Nas, Min Shari Wasil Khanas, Alladhi was Wisufi Sadurin, Min al Jannati wa Nas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul a'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, Maliki Nas, Ilahi Nas, Min Shari Wasil Khanas, Alladhi was Wisufi Sadurin, Min al Jannati wa Nas. Prayer on the Prophet. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Fatihi lima ublika wa khatimi lima sabaka, Nasiru haki wa haki wa hadi ila siratikal mustaqim, wa ala alihi haka kadrihi, wa miqdarihi al-adim. Dua Ibrahim. Surely I turn myself to thee, O Allah, striving to be upright, to thee, the originator of the heavens and the earth, and I am not of the polytheists, for surely my prayers, my sacrifice, my life, my death were all for Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. No associate has thee in this am I commanded, and I am of the submitting ones. O Allah, thou art the king, there is no source for thee. Thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I confess my faults. So grant me protection against all my faults, and none grants protection against faults but thee. And guide me to the best of morals, for none so guides to the best of morals but thee. And take away from me the evil and the indecent morals, for none can take away from me the evil and the indecent morals but thee. O Allah, make Muhammad successful, and make the true followers of Muhammad successful here in the wilderness of North America and beyond. As thou did make Ibrahim and the true followers of Ibrahim successful, for surely thou art praised and magnified in our midst forever. And O Allah, send thy barakas upon Muhammad and upon the true followers of Muhammad here in the wilderness of North America and beyond, as thou didst send barakas upon Ibrahim and the true followers of Ibrahim, for surely thou art ever praised and ever magnified in our midst forever and ever and ever. Ameen. O Allah, send your barakas upon this Murid order. Send your barakas upon Sheikh Ahmad Bamba, Sheikh Ibrahim, Serene Follows, Serene Salihu, Sheikh Sufi Ba. Send your barakas upon the sheikhs of our order, the imams, the jurans, the disciples, and their families in our order. Keep your protection upon us. Protect our sheikh as he traveled the Holy Land, as he moved about, gaining wisdom and giving wisdom, and make him successful in this life and in the life to come. Keep us in the right frame of mind and on the right path, and make us to be successful in all that we do that is aligned with thy divine path in this life and in the life to come. Barke Sheikh Ibrahim, Barke Kadim Rasul, Barke Serene Follow, Barke Serene Salihu, Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba, Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba, Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba. Ameen, Ameen, Ameen.
Ameen.
Tonight, as we go into Kun Kaatiman with Sheikh Farad, we know that this Kasad is lit with wisdom, with protection, and with sure guidance. This Kasad is one of the treasures of our path, given to us, of course, by our master Sheikh Ahmed Dubamba. And Sheikh Farad is obviously doing a fantastic job of leading us through this Kasad's reading and this Kasad's meaning. So we bring him forth to do what he always does, which is to bring us light on this Kasad and marry that with the light of dietary observances and making sure that we are well mentally, spiritually, and physically. We bring forth Sheikh Farad for this wisdom. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Sheikh, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm having issues. Can you all see me on the screen?
No, we see the picture, Sheikh.
Okay. Let me fix that. Background and effects. Okay. Okay, well, as I'm fixing this, let's start off Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the creator of all life, the sender of all prophets. We thank Allah for his majestic wisdom and for all of the knowledge of prophets that have been brought into the world. Allah, the self-created one, the originator of all life. There we go, the sender of all truth. Honorable Elijah Muhammad say, God must be a self-created one, because if there were one to precede his creation, that one would be God. So we know that God is the self-created, as the ancients have always taught. And from that self-creation, of course, the first thing was the manifestation of Nur, or the intention of Muhammad. The light of Muhammad, as Sufis call it, was the first thing created. And from that, his own self-creation and his second self, the creation of the rest of what we now call universe. We thank him for this magnificent work into now what we call the physical body that we are utilizing, and because of the lack of knowledge, misusing, and without proper utilization. But because of his mercy, he began to send guidance into the world in the form of prophets, in the form of revelation and scripture, to help humanity in its fall, so that we will remain afloat in terms of being ourselves. And we thank him for all of those prophets and all of the revelations that they brought to uplift fallen humanity. And in thanking the master of them all, in the most recent revelation, we are thanking them all because they all summarize into Muhammad, alayhi salam, and the most recent revelation of scripture, Holy Quran. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said is the greatest book ever written. It is a unique book in that it is Allah himself speaking to the reader, first, of course, to his messenger, and then to the reader. And of course, these are the verses of a book made manifest. So in such powerful esoteric science, you always have masters in each community, as there are exoteric and esoteric aspects of each community that comes with those who extract the secrets. So in the Christian world, you have Gnosticism, and the great esoteric masters, brothers called the Essenes, which we talked about the Essenes in previous dietary talks. They extracted a lot of the dietary wisdom, but there are also other secrets in terms of the prayers and other unseen realities that the Essenes would bring about. In the Judaic community, the Kabbalists, those who study the Kabbalah, or the tree of life system, which we know, of course, came from ancient Kemet. But in the Jewish community, the Kabbalah is the esoteric aspect of that way. And the Zohar, which they attribute the Zohar to being revealed through Prophet Ibrahim, the Waliul of Allah. And then, of course, we know in Muhammad and in our community, the esoteric secrets are guided in the group that we are now a part of called the Sufis. Well, of course, with each community, there are masters of those particular secrets who become the walis, who become the sheikhs, who become the sages and masters of each system. And we are very, very privileged to be the disciple of the greatest, the disciples of the greatest of those saints to extract the esoteric secrets, and our Sheikh Kadim Rasul, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. As a knower and disciple, devotee of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I will be remiss to not mention the one who is responsible for me finding out about Kadim Rasul, and for finding out about any ancient knowledge and even making it relevant to me as a so-called Negro in the wilderness of North America, the Insan Kamil Master Farad Muhammad, who visited North America and made himself known in 1930, the teacher of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who he believed and taught and knew to be the supreme being in person, meaning the perfect manifestation of the 99 attributes of all of the attributes of Allah, and supremely aware of such, which is what grants him that title. He taught him to be God in person. So if it were not for that visit, whether the rest of us believe that to be true or not, a lot of this knowledge, which we are now becoming adept in, would not be relevant to us here in the wilderness of North America, because our knowledge, our history, our culture, and a lot of these things were kept from us by our open enemies who colonized and enslaved us, and had so beautifully, not beautifully, so brilliantly kept us divided amongst our own, that even those of Asiatic and African descent that would come they were kept away from us. So if it were not for Master Farah Muhammad and his coming, and the love that was put in what Sheikh Sufi Bar calls the Asiatic covenant, because we know, of course, Marcus Garvey and Noble Drew Ali preceded him. But if it were not for this visit, this hands across the globe that you see sitting behind me would not have come about. So I'm honored in the name of all of those, and especially in the name of our beloved Sheikh Sufi Ba, who spent the majority of his life going to get these secrets to bring back to us the divine science of Kadima Rasul, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. I greet you in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. I know people probably get sick of Sheikh Farad and his lengthy openings, but it's just so important to pay homage to the foundation that we're sitting on. The Honorable Marcus Garvey used to say that he used to speak to the roots. A tree not having roots, or people not understanding that history is like a tree not having roots. And so many of us, a lot of our misunderstandings, a lot of our the underestimation of what was brought, and a lot of our inclining to other systems from the ancient world and not realizing those things were right inside of what we already had, comes from us not really knowing the weight of what was given to us upon the visit of this mighty one. The reality to put us face to face with God, which of course means self, and giving us a mathematical theology, which he was really setting the divine framework for us to have to go and get it from Sufism, but we would get it with a particular eye already. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this: when you're teaching a subject, I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say this of teaching, that Elijah Muhammad said, when you start teaching a subject, start at the end of the subject. So go to the conclusion and make that your thesis, and then go backwards and come back to the point of the thesis. So you start at the end. So it's a way of exploding the mind, opening it up. Start at the end. So Insan Kamil Master Farah Muhammad burst on the scene in 1930 and began teaching a teaching that would shake up the world, right? He came, alhamdulillah, thank you. Yes, we will use it. We will make use of that today. Yes, beloved admin, Sheikh Mustafa. So he burst onto the scene asking a very, very important question that we are given in the question number 1 of the student enrollment. Those of us who study the supreme wisdom, and it's called the knowledge degree. The gods call it the knowledge degree in the 1 through 10. Who is the original man? Right? Who is the original man? Now we know what who is in the Arabic, and the sound HU. It's interesting that in the English, this H, this WHO, is something that we use to denote identity. When we're asking, who are you? We're asking something in reference to identity. So if you take this question, who is the original man, you could literally make the question an answer, a statement. So if you pose it, put a question mark there, who is the original man? Right? Let's do a little mastery of the English language, like he taught us at English lesson C1. Who is the original man? Right? Now let's take the question mark off and make it a period and just make it a statement. Who is the original man? Of course, we know the is an equal sign. What is on one side is equal to what's on the other side. And we know that who deals with the primordial intelligence of existence. The who is the chant that we do. There's a whole system of belief that exists today. The Nkankars, this is the only chant that they use, is the who. But the who is referring to the most primordial, essential aspects of Allah.
So when you ask the question, who is the original man, what you're really saying when you make it a statement is that who is the original mind that created the universe? And he answers it, of course, we all know the answer. But I'm making this point, these kind of points, the thesis of our talk today, because we spent the last 6 weeks talking about words of power and the difference in words of power and words of meaning. Okay? It's like in public speaking, they say that you're supposed to teach what you're going to teach, then teach what you're teaching, and then teach what you just taught. So this is what we're doing now. We're going over, we're recapping what we've taught. What we've taught is the reason why a kasai, especially one that's written by Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, is such a powerful tool to have in our toolbox. And the most powerful of tools to have is because the Arabic language, the Wolof language, and the fact that Khadim Rasul, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, was pulling all of these secrets from Quran, which is written from Allah himself. Allah himself is writing differently from other scriptures where it's prophets writing what they received as inspiration. Allah himself is talking in the Holy Quran. So when you're using these verses that are based off of Allah's words, you're literally using Allah's words, literally. And so in using Allah's word, it is as if Allah is giving you the keys to his universe. And that it really is what it is. It's not as if, that is what it is. It's, the universe has no way of disobeying Allah. So Allah tells you, say this. Okay, the this that you're saying are words of power, and the words of power have particular spiritual characteristics that are embedded in the very words themselves. This is what we talked about in the previous week. So we're doing a recap of what we taught. Okay, the ancients in the ancient Dravidian system, or some would say in Indus Kush, called this bija, or words of power. Right, the original man from that part of the world that we today call India, called this bija, seated sound. Right, sounds that are seated. Seated with what? With intellectual meaning, like the word dog. If I look up the word dog and go to a dictionary and it's going to give me a description. No, words of meaning, as somebody, I forget who, I think it was Sheikh Salih that said it so beautifully last class or the class before. Words of meaning describe something. Words of power influence and produce and create the something. So one of these is causal, and the other is acting from the standpoint of effect. One is somebody producing what's about to happen, and the other is somebody describing what just happened, right? Two different things. So what we talked about is the reason why Kun Kaatiman, and in this particular instance, because this is the Qasida that our beloved Sheikh commissioned me to teach in this class, but it's really any Qasida that's written by Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, especially. Now, I could say any Qasida because we know other walis and saints wrote Qasidas and prayers. We have prayers that were revealed in Howas like Salatul Fatih and others, where saints locked themselves in a room, got in tune with Allah, and Allah gave them these things for us to use as tools. But it is especially the case when you're dealing with Khadim Rasul, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, because in one of the Qasidas, he said that Allah put all of the secrets. He's of course, could say Allah did it, but he's literally said the Kutubs themselves gave and deposited all of the secrets into him. And he said he repeated it at the beginning of this Kasida and at the end. So when we're studying, this is why, to me, another Sheikh asked me the question, in this logo that you're using in the Fordania, why are you trying to specify that that's Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba over just Sufism in general? He said, because Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba is not the only one that was saying the things that he was saying. There were other contemporary sheikhs that were around. And of course, our beloved Sheikh Sufi Ba taught us this is the reason why he moved around from order to order. He said, because all of the secrets, all of the formulas work. And we, of course, in Islam, we don't make no distinction between any of the great ones, the prophets, the walis, the messengers, or any of it, because it's all from Allah. We understand that. But here's a unique case of somebody that reached a station that nobody else reached. Qadim Rasul, he reached. And we talked about in the previous talks, that when a maqam is reached, such as this, the relationship of that saint, of that wali, the relationship with the universe changes. There's a covenant now with the universe that their words have the power of kun. Interesting that this Qasida is called Kun Kaatiman. And really, he's giving you in this Qasida the framework to how to get to that station to where your words will have the power of kun. This is really just, this Qasida is really more of a kind of like a guide to the adapt that is necessary to become the one that would have the power of kun in your words. Okay? So this is what we talked about. These are not just prayers in the sense of asking, hoping that God will reply. Something way more powerful than that. I was recently challenged by a Christian who was talking about speaking in tongues. And he was talking about the scripture's relationship between having the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues. And he was trying to get me to see that our way was a lesser way because of their use of the speaking in tongues. So I started thinking about this. And of course, the Qasidas being inside of me helps. I said, well, what is the point of speaking in tongues? The point from the Christian standpoint of speaking in tongues is that you're getting ancient tongues from God, and the words that you're saying, supposedly, and I'm saying supposedly because everybody that's saying that they're speaking in tongues weren't. Okay, we know classic cases of people that was just throwing stuff together. I even had a person that did it. They prayed over me, and they were saying words that were clearly Hebrew and Aramaic words. They just didn't know that I knew that. And not to say that the words can't be definable, but according to the Christian context of speaking in tongues, it's not supposed to be something that can be comprehended by the human being, which is what to them makes it powerful. But I said, but if you look at it, Allah himself gave us his words. So if anything, the Muslim, especially the Sufi, we speak in tongues in the highest of levels because we're speaking with God's tongue himself, his direct tongue. This is God saying, look, these are the words that I use to move things. Say this. Forget your words, especially if you're speaking in English, especially if you grew up in the wilderness of North America, speaking in a bastard language, and then we speak in a broken version of the bastard language. Forget your words. Say this. I don't even like praying in English no more, even when I know the English, because I know that my brain is doing something different when I say Fatiha in the Arabic. Well, the same thing is true of these Qasidas. And this is what we talked about. This is what we have come to in this 6 weeks. Words of power. Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's Qasides are made up of words of power, words that actually move creation, words that actually shift reality, words that override three-dimensional space, time, events, override lower vibrations, override and undo magic, black magic, negative use of witchcraft, evil eye, and other plottings of enemies, even an outright physical attempt on your life. The vibration of that physical attempt is not as great as the words of power that are in the Kasides. So you could be on the way to your death, say a Kaside, and it'll completely reverse the variable and perhaps even make the person end up killing themselves. This is how powerful what we have in these writings of Kadima Rasul Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. So you will have to go back to the previous talks to hear what we've spoke about. We've used the book Metu Netta Volume 1 and 2. I'm going to talk about them later, but I'm not going to use them today. But we have used it in at least 3 of the last calls because our beloved Cheikh said that this is the same system from ancient Kemet, and that book describes the understanding of these things better than any book I've seen. Okay, so that's what we started off talking about. Then we moved into the Kasaid being a Sheikh aspect of the Kasaid, that the Sheikh, the Kasaid itself is a Sheikh that is actually producing a dab, because you got to remember it's seated sound. So in this particular Qasida, it's seated with the very, very foundational components of Sharia, the very components of Islam that lead to Iman and Ihsan. Just by saying it, it's embedding the frequency of discipline into you. And if you go and read the 16 verses, which we have done at just about every call, you will see that is the case. And then, of course, we also talked about the Abjad 55, which is the Mujib, the responsive, and that our beloved Sheikh Sufi Ba taught us that if you use the Abjad 55 to any verse, that it will actually make that verse respond to you. So what this is implying is that the Qasida is teaching you something, because Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba embedded his very consciousness, his very awareness, and other secrets and powers and characteristics and everything that come with the names. Because if you notice, all of the Qasidas have attributes of Allah in them. In the middle, you'll see there's always some place where he's going to put attributes, sometimes in just about every verse. So these verses are words of power. This is a word that a supreme being would use to produce his reality. Okay, because when you're operating from, and we talked about that too, the different levels of awareness, and the one that is in connection with Ba, B-A, the name that you see on many of our sheikhs, Sheikh Sufi Ba, Sheikh Idris Ba, Sheikh Falu Ba. The Ba is the level of the soul where the being has access to something called Shechem. Shechem is the soul, the part where it's like the underlying part of all physical reality and everything, the Shechem. So Shechem, of course, sounds like Sheikh. So when a person becomes a Sheikh, they have access to Shechem. They are a Ba man. They're at the level of Ba. And now this is where they have access to Spirit 3 of the Tree of Life, which is called Seker. Seker is where the 99 names or the attributes of God and the 50 units of sound that are underlying everything. The 50 units of sound are in all of the mantras of the world, the highest of them in Arabic, because God himself constructed these. And so when the Sheikh knows which ones to use, it really gives that person power over life or death, power over creation. So it really gives you the value of a wali, a value of a Sheikh, according to his station. And then, of course, this is also one of the symbologies of the black fez, because the black represents dying to the physical world, which you must do in order to really gain the complete access. But we also talked about how usually in ancient Kemet, they would have schools for adab, schools for character, schools for purification, before they would even give you the words of power. That's in Spirit 3, or Seker. And of course, Seker, Seker, is where the word seek ye first the kingdom. The seeker finds God in Seker. That's a coin from Sheikh Farad, because in Seker is where you find out the use of the names of God. So the seeker finds God in Seker. All right. So these are all the things that we talked about so far. We came up some and we talked about the fear of hunger. How Sheikh Ahmed Dubama in verse 5 says, Fal ilmu la yuta liman yaksha tiwan. Because science is never granted to anyone who fears hunger. You all have heard, by Allah's grace, my dietary teachings on the two brains, or the dance of nutrition, how this brain commands the body, this brain feeds this brain. And the more this brain is being used, the less this brain is being used, because this brain is spending all of its time telling this brain to digest what you gave it. So if you are a person that fears taking away from this brain, you're going to never access the power of this brain, which is the sciences that he's speaking of. And even the sciences, the ilm ladun, the sciences of the heart, a knowledge of the heart, these things will never open up because of fear of hunger. So are there any questions so far on the recaps before I jump into tonight's subject? Oh, laduni, I was mispronouncing that. Any questions so far? How's everybody feeling? We got a large call tonight. How's everybody feeling? Are we feeling good like Allah always should? Got quiet tonight.
Alhamdulillah, Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah.
Praise.
Amen. Yes. Okay. Well, by Allah's grace, I am actually in Hova right now. I only came out to teach. I've been in the severe isolation for a few days, utilizing some tools, shifting some things for us, and by Allah's grace for myself. And it's a tremendous privilege to teach from this spirit, because that solitude, and when you're feeding and drinking from the weird, it just does something that is almost unexplainable. It's such a transformation. So please, if you can, begin to utilize time where you could go off to yourself and really drink into the practices and formulas and different things that we've been given. Okay, so beloved admin, because you put up the Hatha Yoga, what I want to do now, since I think I painted a pretty good picture with Kaatiman, and unless you have any questions about what we have already talked about, I won't go back right now, but I want to cover, because Sheikh asked me to add a dietary component. Oh, you found another. Man, I like the cover of that. I was looking for the one that I had given. Remember, it was a handout in class. But okay, this is the book, though. I'm thinking this is the book. Go to the table of contents, beloved. Let me see what it says. Somebody's. Okay. Let me look at the table of contents. Oh yeah, this is a heavy book. This is a manual. This is like a yogi's manual. This isn't the one. I was asking if you had, there was a handout that I gave in class that was called Ashes of the System. Let me look in the portal. It might be in the handouts in the portal. And it came from the book Hatha Yoga.
Sheikh, what was the name of that again?
It's called Ashes of the System.
Hold on, I do have that. 1 second.
That's a good book. I'm glad you put that up because I'm definitely going to go find it.
I'm gonna send it right to you, Sheikh. Astaghfirullah.
Alhamdulillah. Matter of fact, let's do this. I just found Appetite versus Hunger. And we'll put that, I'm gonna send it to you again. I know you have it, but I'll send it so you'll have it and you can post it in. And then the next one will be Ashes of the System.
Okay. No, so not this one yet.
Yeah, we'll put that one up second. Let's put I just sent you the Appetite versus Hunger. So put that up first. I need to find so we're gonna spend the last part of this talking mostly about diet stuff because this is the dietary spirituality part. Sheikh Ahmad Ubamba said, you know, no one would ever be granted knowledge if they feared hunger. So we're gonna go into what there will be no reason to fear it if we understood what these things are. Okay. We got some newcomers to the calls. Assalamu alaikum to anyone that is on the call for the first time. And I'm going to encourage you, as Sheikh Mustafa makes it an excellent point, to put the post or the recordings into the chat. Go back and watch from the beginning so that you could be up to speed to where we are today. Because it would be too much for us to go back. We are week 7. And we're trying to get finished so we could anxiously sit in that classroom with Sheikh Idris Ba. Alhamdulillah.
Sheikh, if you give me 1 minute, I'll turn these around for us. If you give me 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, I was just about to. Okay. So while Sheikh Mustafa is doing that, I will say, when Sheikh Ahmad Ubamba talks about the fear of hunger, okay. So in the Dr. Detox teachings, we talk about this in a class called Appetite versus Hunger. And we, in a very, very descriptive way, describe hunger versus appetite. And one of the first things that we address in class is getting away from associative definitions of things. Okay, the associative definitions of things get us in trouble. This is why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we need to learn how to master the English language, because that language is the language that we got trapped in. And he says, if you want to dig a man up, you got to go where he's buried. So we were buried in the English. So we must first wake up and master this language. And really what Insan Kamil Masfar Muhammad, thank you, beloved, gave us was, he gave us the Arabic content and the Arabic dialectical understanding of words, but he gave it to us in the English. So by the time, as Elijah Muhammad's followers, this is why it's so easy for us to take to Sufism and any other ancient teaching, because we've already been taught things from the conceptual standpoint. Once we get the language, it's easy because the meanings have already been conveyed. So Master Muhammad took the best of the English language and made it give us Arabic understanding of things. And then, of course, he said there's only 400 words in the language that's even considered well. So the language is very limited, which is why our use of ancient knowledge in English is very limited, which is also why every system makes you learn their scriptures in the ancient tongue that it was revealed in. Every system does this. At some point, if you're studying Judaism, you're going to want to know the Torah in Hebrew, the Zohar in Aramaic, because it's certain content and concepts that just don't convey. They don't even cross over. Okay. So you're going to have to go back into the other videos to see when we talked about that. Dealing with the fear of hunger, I want to make a note that every ancient and modern system, esoteric system, whether it's a shamanic brotherhood in the bush somewhere, or if it's a secret society that's moving around in day-to-day society. Every one of these systems teach dietary abstinence in some form. Every one of them. There is no real spiritual system in the world where dietary abstinence is not mentioned as a part of it. So of course, it doesn't surprise us at all that Cheikh Akwadubambu would manage to mention this in a Kasai. We know his history. There's two sets of legend around it. One says he didn't eat at all. One says if he did eat, it was something very light, something very basic, and it was very little. Of course, not eating is not enough. There are other things that go with that way of life, because the masters and the saints also breathe a particular way. So they were pulling prana and pulling nutrients and things from the air with their intense levels of breathing. And of course, that breathing was less, breathing slower, breathing more deep, what we call diaphragmic, or breathing from the diaphragm, or pot belly breathing, rhythmic breathing. There's a book called Science of Breath that's written by this same author that wrote this book, where this handout is from, that goes into great detail about the ancient use of breathing. Of course, we know in the Quran, Allah says when he breathed into Adam, then the angels were told to bow to him. Well, of course, that's allegorical, meaning he deposited his self or the attributes, but there is a literal scientific meaning to that verse, which does deal with breathing. That is something awake, there's an awakening that happens when you properly breathe. And of course, in this culture, we've been taught how to improperly eat, improperly breathe, and everything else kind of runs off of that. So we have literally been living life backwards in terms of eating, in terms of breathing, in terms of language. And if you look at the word devil spelled backwards is lived. So life lived backwards is devilishment. And we bear witness to that here in the West. Okay, so let's go back to verse 5 of Kaatiman. In verse 5, he says, no one who fears hunger will ever be granted knowledge. Right? Okay, well, the question is, now let's put some Dr. Detox spin on this. Why would one even fear hunger? The reason one would fear hunger is because they don't know that there's a difference between hunger and appetite. So we're going to define these things in the call today. Handout, and we're going to use this handout to help us. Okay. So first, if there's anybody taking notes, maybe this can be typed into the chat and then somebody can screenshot it as a note. Let me give some proper definitions of these things that we've been using associative definitions with. Hunger, first. Hunger is that which deals with the cells requiring nourishment. Hunger is that which deals with, it's a process in the body that deals with the cells requiring nourishment. When the cells are requiring nourishment, this is what we call hunger. The process that deals with the body or the cells requiring nourishment. You going into a place where food smells good and your stomach start growling, that is not hunger. Okay? Hunger is that which deals with the cells requiring nourishment. If you've ever gone on a fast for real, you have glimpsed hunger. And I say glimpse because according to Insan Kamil, Master Farad Muhammad, who taught the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in How to Eat to Live, he states that the average person in the West has enough food in the intestines and in the blood to live for 6 months. And this was back in the 60s when that book was written. So imagine how much food is in the cell, in the blood and intestines of people now. especially being that the Satans, according to Prophet Isa, in the Essene Gospel of Peace, have gotten us to eat more and more and more. Okay? The Satans have gotten us to eat more and more and more. So most of us have not been hungry. Now, there is a hunger that we do experience here in the West as a result of not eating actual food, and that's what's called being overfed and undernourished. So even though we're eating, we're not really eating food. So when the cells go to draw, when the small intestine goes to draw from what we're eating, nothing is gained from it. And so that ends up being a form of malnourishment. So this is why you see so many deficiencies. This is why you see a lot of our health issues come from being overfed but undernourished. But it's not because we're not eating enough, it's because we're not eating food and we're eating too many times a day. So we're interfering with the digestive process, which would allow us to get the most out of a meal when we do eat. So, okay, once again, hunger, its proper definition is that which deals with the cells requiring nourishment. That's hunger. Okay. Now, appetite is what we're really up against here. Hunger is easy. Appetite is what we're up against. And appetite is that which deals with habits and patterns, and also that which is controlled and influenced by toxins in the body and the great trickster. So when you're dealing with habits and patterns, appetite is something more programmable. It's the receptive aspect of your digestive system, which basically goes with what you've been giving it. So a person's appetite is going to be as healthy as what they eat. So what you crave determines how healthy your appetite is. So in the last week's recitation of Kaatiman, our beloved Cheikh Idris Bar was saying he added he improved the translation and said those who don't have a healthy appetite, because we're supposed to have appetite, but appetite is trainable. And appetite is supposed to give us back what we give it. So when you're depositing food into the body, that's what appetite should call for. And the cleaner you become, the cleaner your appetite becomes. But you train appetite. Appetite does not happen on its own. Appetite has very little to do with hunger. Appetite deals mostly with what you crave, habits and patterns, and in a negative sense deals with the toxins and what we call the great trickster. Now, the great trickster is once the toxins affect the mind, once the toxins affect the brain and start to control the brain, now the brain is telling you to crave the thing that you shouldn't. This Insan Kamil Master Farah Muhammad talked about in English lesson C1 of the Supreme Wisdom Lessons, where he sarcastically asks the question after he spells the point that we have been given the wrong food as babies, and the devil taught us to eat the wrong food, the devil meaning the opposers of God. This system is devilishment. It opposes God. And those devils who run that system had enslaved us, and partially by giving us the wrong foods when we were babies. Of course, it's talking about spiritual foods and concepts, but it is literally talking about physical foods as well. The fact that we as a people made a whole culture out of eating something that is divinely prohibited shows you really two things. It shows you really the miraculous power of Allah, because somehow we still became the most creative people. We're hog on our brains. We still, some kind of way, was the cream of the crop. Even in the midst of that, we somehow developed a biological resilience to be able to adapt to, a lot of our elders were still living to be 120. You read slave narratives of people that were 120, 115, 120 years old. But it also shows you the wickedness of the slave masters that owned us, because there was a purposeful administering of particular foods given to us, almost as if they knew it was going to have effects on us. You know, this hog particularly, the slave masters that owned us knew that these people that orchestrated slavery had to have a particular knowledge of slavery, of foods, in order to make sure that that hog was going to be part of the slave diet. Now, the rest of it was just ironically trash that was thrown away, and then we some kind of way made a culture out of it. But these things are part of the plight of our slavery. And this Master Muhammad talks about when he says the devil gave us the wrong foods when we were babies. Then he asks the question, what does that have to do with the above question 10? Question 10 deals with the us being made other than our own selves, right? So he says, he's basically, he's putting a paradigm in our brain, basically getting us to see subconsciously by forming it as a sarcastic question to see his point, which was that the food makes us ourselves or not. So in point 10, he says, because the devil taught him to eat the wrong food, right? Then point 11, which we love to hear our brother Cheikh Idris talk about the number 11. It says, does that have anything to do with the above question number 10? Now, here's what's interesting. On the Tree of Life, from the Metal Netter, the system, the book that we talked about, volume 1, he mentions 10 spheres of life, okay? These 10 spheres are what's called the Tree of Life that the Jews got the Kabbalah system from, that they use today, deals with how you are traveling through different levels of awareness, and what happens on each sphere is according to the development of internal faculties. Okay, so level 10 is denoted by a being called Geb, G-E-B, Geb. And in the ancient Kemet, they depicted Geb as the overseer of the mundane world. So the mundane meaning everything that deals with physicality, diet, hygiene, energy healing, energy uses. So like sciences like feng shui, internal cleansing, of course, dietary. All of these things deal with Geb, but this is at the bottom of the tree. And this is what the ancients said about Geb, that Geb is really a summation of all of the other 9 spheres. So you can't skip Geb and get to the higher realms like we like to do so many times in spirituality. I've had people to come to me for particular spiritual healing. They knew that I do detoxification as a practitioner, and they'll outright say to me, well, I don't, I want to deal with some more spiritual stuff. I don't really want to deal with all of the colon and all of that. As if somehow one of these is over the other one. You can't get to this higher spiritual until the body is in a clean state. And that's what the Essene Gospel of Peace was telling us. So that's what appetite is. Appetite is habits and patterns that you have built. And the toxins and parasites now regulate you according to that. So the Holy Quran asks the questions, have you seen him who takes his lower desire as his God? See, that's what happens to you once the toxins take over. Your lower desire becomes your God. Now it becomes what guides you, what rules you. But that only happens until you begin to cleanse and until you begin to purify. And on your way to Iman and Ihsan, purification, not just of the heart, purification, period. How can we think purification of the heart, but not purification of the body? They both have to happen simultaneously. One makes the other happen. When you cleanse the body, the heart automatically cleanses. the physical heart and your spiritual heart. I don't like saying it like that, but for the lack of, better way to say it in English, I hate separating it, because in the ancient world, the languages don't leave room for that, which doesn't leave room for the concepts in the mind. But you all know what I'm saying. Well, the fact that we're speaking in English, we have to say it like this. Okay? So the esoteric heart and the exoteric heart, let's say it like that, both have to be purified simultaneously, and they both happen through the physical purification of the body. But guess what? If you fear hunger, you'll never get to that part. So Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba says so very, very plainly in Kaatiman, Kel ilmu la yuta liman yaksha tawan, because science is never granted to anyone who fears hunger. So if you fear being hungry, forget about this part. Go back to church, do something else. Go back to the world. This is not the path for you. Not that we're going to require you to be hungry, but you can't fear it. You can't fear that going without meals for a couple of days. I remember the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan used to tell us in the nation, if you can't go 24 hours without eating, you are not a Muslim. If you can't fast for a day, you are not a Muslim. Now, of course, we know we are Muslim by nature, but I'm saying you can't even begin to think of obeying Allah, obeying the basic points of Sharia, and you can't even tell your appetite no. Right? So, you imagine that in the nation, we fast 3 days every month. We fast 2 Ramadans. We did the Ramadan with them, and then our Ramadan that we did in December. So fasting was the way of the nation. And that's why you've seen the Muslims looking so bright and youthful and vibrant. Well, when you look at the pictures, I've met many Senegalese Murids that don't submit to the American diet, and they have that same kind of glow. It's a similar glow. I've met yogis, I've met Buddhists that don't submit to the standard American diet. There's a similar glow. So it's something to this. And it's the reason why Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba mentioned it in this Kasai. So, okay, enough on that. Let's get into this handout a little bit. Sheikh Mustafa, is it a way I can make this? It doesn't allow me to zoom it. Let me see. Oh, yes, it does. Okay, there we go. Can you all see me moving the document?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam, Sister Ayashe. How are you?
I'm great. I think we can zoom it ourselves. I just did it.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, cool. So let's just start off. But for some reason, I don't know if me moving it moves it for you all, because I'm trying to read it and it looks like it's moving.
No, I have to control it, Sheikh.
You have to control it. Okay. So just expand it a little bit on the screen for me. Make it as big as you can make it on the screen. Okay. Yeah, make it okay. Now one back. One more. Stop. There we go. Yeah, that's enough. Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna just read through this if you all don't mind, and then maybe we'll take. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I want to go through a little bit of what is said. And this is from a system called Hatha Yoga. Now, once again, Sheikh Fard always using these un-Islamic reference points, and there's a reason for this. Because a lot of times the other systems argue with us, not realizing that we have the best exemplary examples of their way. So if we see it in everybody else's stuff, then we can come back and say, well, this is what your teacher taught. Right? So that's why I like to present it. And sometimes in the religious Islam, you don't find a lot of this kind of information too. That's the other part. So the Quran says we made this word to have a connection throughout the land. So we have to go other places to find it. That's why the Quran says, take on the parable of the bee. What does the bee do? The bee goes from flower to flower, getting the knowledge,
and you know, chewing it, digesting it, and then making a healing out of it. So that's symbolic that we can pull from other systems of knowledge. Okay. Now, all right. So we're gonna read from this handout, Hatha Yoga. As we said at the conclusion of the preceding chapter, hunger and appetite are two entirely different attributes of the human body. Hunger is the normal demand for food, appetite the abnormal craving. Hunger is like the rosy hue upon the cheek of a healthy child. Appetite is like the roused face of the woman of fashion. And yet most people use the terms as if their meaning were identical. Let us see wherein lies the difference. It is quite difficult to explain the respective sensations or symptoms of hunger and appetite to the average person who has attained the age of maturity. For the majority of persons of that age have had their natural taste, hunger instinct perverted by appetite to such extent that they have not experienced the sensation of a genuine hunger for many years and have forgotten just what it felt like. Now, mind you, family, this book was written in 1902. This book was written a century ago, right? Over a century ago. And in 1902, they was talking like this about appetite and hunger. Imagine if this book was written today. So, as it is hard to describe a sensation unless one can call up in the mind of its hearer the recollection of the same or a similar sensation experienced at some time in the past, we can describe a sound to the person of normal hearing by comparing it with something he has heard. But imagine the difficulty of conveying an intelligent idea of a sound to a man who was born stone deaf, or describing a color to a man born blind, or giving an intelligent description of an odor to one born without the sense of smell. Take it to the next page. So he's saying that we so far away from appetite, we so far away from natural appetite now, we don't even know what it is anymore. It's foreign to us. See? And it's only because the Satans have told us we have to eat more and more and more and more and more. And we have a fear of hunger, which of course Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba say is an impediment to the path. Okay, could you give me the next page, beloved? Any questions so far? Let me look in the chat. Okay, explain this question. Assalamu alaikum to Rabah. He says, but isn't the Sheikh, may the absolute grant him proximity, referring to sustenance in terms of provisions that is used to secure food? Could you explain your point, beloved?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. I was just meaning that he used food as a metaphor for, in those times, it wasn't really they dealt with money, but they didn't really deal with money. It was more trade.
Mm-hmm.
So you had things to secure the food. So how I interpret that is that if you fear your sustenance is not going to come, then the path is not for you. Not necessarily the actual food, but the food, absolutely, yeah, that's to conquer your nafs and your lower self.
Mm-hmm.
But the substance as far as to attain the food, so now it would be interpreted as, money, or where my next meal coming from, meaning that my job or the money that I'm gonna have to secure the food.
Mm-hmm.
Start along.
Now, and thank you for that, beloved. Two things that I would say to that. Now, that the meaning of parable, because you use allegory, parable literally means parallel meaning. That's the literal meaning of it. So a parallel meaning what something means on one side it means the same on the other side. And what this is dealing with is the two hemispheres of the brain. So a parable will have a literal meaning, but also have an allegorical meaning, but one doesn't undo the other. Because if you notice in the following verse, he says something about sustenance. In verse 9, he says, you who are looking to know, do not look at money at the same time. So that in that verse, he's dealing with what you're talking about the fear of losing sustenance. So I'm saying one doesn't have to undo the other. But in this particular verse, he literally said food. And I don't think that it's an irony that he didn't eat much himself while saying this. So yes, it could refer to that, but one doesn't have to undo the other. It's literal food too, because you're not going to find nowhere in the world where masters ate a lot or even thought that they had to eat a lot.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm not cutting your wisdom on that, but I really want us to. I think that because this is something that's overlooked so easily and can be almost allegorized away, for such term, it's something that gets overlooked. And which is why Master Muhammad said in the lessons, what does that have to do with the above question number 10? It's something that we just will write off and completely miss when it's one of the main points. When you open the book, How to Eat to Live, Honorable Elijah Muhammad starts off saying that Master Muhammad told him, no God or prophet can help us or improve our conditions without changing our dietary habits. No God or prophet. Why? Because Allah says he doesn't change the condition of a people until they change themselves. So when you think about what happens when you're changing the internal condition of the body, when you fast, what are you really doing? You're changing all of the elements, right? You are all of the elements. You are the earth. You are air. You are fire. You are the universe. So when you change it within, what has no choice to happen without? The universe has to change. But Allah will be breaking the laws of the universe to leave you and I in a filthy state internally and then give us externally heaven. He would be going against his own law to do that. You see what I'm saying? So I think this is the point that Sheikh Ahmad Dubam is making at the onset, saying, look, then you got to consider the time he was in. The French, a lot of these dietary habits we have came from Europe, came from these people that were eating more and more and more. Not as much as we do today, but they were still eating more than them. And so I would imagine that he and some of his disciples that were coming to take bayat with Kadim Rasul, he ran into this issue. Like, okay, y'all gonna have to let go of that fear of thinking that that you got to eat. And I know this because I run across it. When you come through the class, the Dr. Detox class, the first thing that we always do is a 3-day cleanse. And it sometimes is the biggest turning point for everybody, because something as simple as going 3 days. Now you have to be supervised and advised to go longer, but the average person can go 3 days. But usually after that, they're never the same. It's like something clicks, like, dang, I don't even have to eat that much. I've been thinking all this time. That's the point, is to get you to see that your sustenance is really not depending on food. So let's use your word. Your sustenance is really dependent on Allah. Food is just there to help your body to have some of the biological components to carry the life force and carry so forth. But food itself is not sustaining us. And we think that. Does that make sense, family?
Absolutely. I'm totally in line with everything you're saying as far as the food aspect to gaining mastery of yourself. When you fast and you experience that, then you start to gain control of yourself. Then you realize who and what is really in control.
Yes.
It gets really deep, and it's like what you're eating. It's a relationship too. So
yes.
You're dealing with the plants and vegetables. It helps, and man, it's a deep. That's a whole nother thing.
Yes, sir. I mean, And you know, I think that I'm going at it from this angle too, because I think Cheikh wanted me to put a dietary stamp, if you will, on this, because he said adds dietary spirituality. Of course, this is what, by Allah's grace, I come to the order to teach, but he wanted me to add it to this Kasai because I think he knew in his studying of Kaatiman that this is what Cheikh Ahmad Bamba was referring to. And of course,
go back to original Sunnah. You know, the Prophet Muhammad
right.
upon him spoke about that. You know, as far as the eating less thing, it's plenty of traditions that's on that. So that's why Cheikh Ahmad Bamba said, I didn't come to create nothing new. I just came to revive
exactly
the original way.
Yes, absolutely.
Just
absolutely. I mean, thank you for that comment, beloved. Anybody else? All right. Well, since we so slow on time, let's go. Sheikh Mustafa, go ahead and put in the ashes of the system, and we'll come back to this app because I think that first couple of paragraphs kind of spoke to what we were saying. Pull in the ashes of the system now. Got a full house tonight. Not used to y'all being so quiet though. What's going on, Salihu now? I see Salihu now in the building. Habibi, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Cheikh.
Yeah, Sheikh Sally. What's going on?
Alaikum assalam.
Yes. Was that the mystic Darrah is in the building? The one who has the scientific questions. I mean, okay. Let's go to, there's a point in this document. I thought I gave one in class that was highlighted. Is one, to go to the next page, there's a part where it's talking about the natives was using the ibis bird to, the natives found out about basically enemas from the ibis bird. Oh, there we go. I think you found it. Many centuries ago. Yep, that's the page right there. Yep, they went right to it. Thank you. Let's stretch it up for me. I want to show you all something. Now, mind you, Hatha Yoga, the place where this handout comes from, is from a system, one of the most ancient systems of yoga from ancient India. And Hatha Yoga is like Geb in the Tree of Life. It's the first system of yoga that you go through. This is before postures. This is before anything else. Hatha Yoga is level 1. You don't get to skip it. And in this book, they're talking about cleansing. This is one of the handouts that I use in class. So I wanted to close out with this. Okay, so in the second paragraph, he says, we will go to the animal kingdom for suggestion. Many centuries ago, the natives of India noticed that certain birds of the ibis family, ibis is the bird that you see on the Tahuti depiction, the Tahuti glyph. Tahuti's top of his body is an ibis bird. Okay. A long-billed bird that will return from journeys into the interior in a wretched condition, which was due either to their eating some berry, which was very constipating, or else having been where there was no water to drink, possibly both. The bird would reach the river in almost an exhausted condition. Scarcely able to fly from weakness, the bird would fill its bill and mouth with water from the river, and then, inserting the bill into the rectum, would inject the water into the bowel, which would relieve in a few moments. The bird will repeat this several times until the bowl was completely emptied, and would then sit around and rest for a few minutes until its vitality was restored, when after drinking freely from the river, it will fly away, as strong, as active as ever. Now think about this. Look around at his lessons in nature. The bird was smart enough to figure out that V equals P minus O, the formula of life that y'all always hear me talk about. The vitality equals power minus obstruction. The obstruction was the constipation from whatever berry or whatever they're eating or not finding water, right? But the bird had enough instinctive sense to know, okay, I'm not going to be able to continue to fly way down like this. So it made its own way to eliminate. And I think a bird is an excellent example to use because a bird flies. So that means this is symbolic of you cannot reach the higher levels until you first empty and cleanse and free up everything that inhibits the life force, inhibits the higher faculties. Okay. So it says the chief and the priest of the tribes, noticing this occurrence and its wonderful effect upon the birds, began to reason about the matter. And finally, someone suggested that it might be tried to advantage of some of the old men who, by reason of their non-activity and sedentary habits, had departed from nature's normal plan and had become constipated. V equals P minus O, family. So they managed to construct a primitive implement resembling a syringe. Stretch it back up for me. A syringe resembling a syringe from the reeds with a sort of blowpipe attachment would inject warm river water into the bowels of the old men suffering from this complaint. The results were wonderful. The old men took on a new lease of life, took unto themselves young wives, and began to enter again into the active work of the tribe and to resume their positions as heads of the tribe, much to the amazement of the younger men who had considered the veterans out of the contest. The old men of their tribes heard, the old men of other tribes heard of the occurrence and began coming in, borne on the shoulders of the young men they are said to have walked home unaided. So they mentioned this in this book, Hatha Yoga, to illustrate a point that everything revolves around physical health. And so in the ancient yoga system is the honestly, and I was saying this to Cheikh some weeks ago, the yogic systems, particularly bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of submitting to a guru, is the closest thing to Sufism. And it probably mimics our path better than anything else. And it's so mathematical. It's not spooky at all. Everything is logically, mathematically laid out. And so them understanding that in order for you to be tuned up to a frequency where you can carry the power of what is in these kasides, of course, they weren't using kasides, but they, carrying higher power from self, they understood that the body has to be freed up of obstruction. This has to be the case. So they put it into their culture that if you're going to come in, especially into the mystery school, especially among the masters, you can't skip over level 10. You can't skip Geb. You can't skip the Hatha Yoga, the mundane part. You have to go through that. And in this teaching, and I'm, by Allah's grace, trying to implement this into our order, where we understand that dietary cleanliness, it has to be as much of a pillar of Islam as everything else for us. Otherwise, you just have stagnated power that you're building when you're building your practices. Think about it. Cheikh told us that the Prophet teaches that we use astaghfirullah because we're cleansing our sins before we approach the throne of, the power. Sheikh Sufi was saying, use the Astaghfirullah bihi before each practice to clear the way. Matajani Sheikh used to say something similar to that, clear the way to the throne. So it's like every system understands that you have to be free of obstructing forces, whether that force is waste that's in the physical body or whether it's sin that's in your spiritual life. You have to be free of the negative aspects before you can really ascend. And so really we could train, if we want to make an allegory out of the fear of hunger, it could also be just, fearing anything, lacking anything. You have to almost not fear losing. You could take it to a higher level. The fear, the whole aspect of lack, period. If you fear hunger in any form, then you won't be granted knowledge, because what it requires to grow into the higher aspect of knowledge is ascension, purification, and really an openness. There has to be a open heart. We pray in the Holy Quran, expand my breast. There has to be an opening to receive that kind of wisdom. And that is the purpose of the Qasidas, the purpose of the prayers and the practices and everything. And then of course, if you can maintain the discipline that Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba is talking about in Kun Kaatiman, being concealed, being basically humble and concealing your practice, working on yourself internally and concealing your power. That's what being humble means. Humble doesn't mean to not have power, it just means to hide it. That's what being humble means. And he's saying to do that in the beginning to save yourself trouble. And then he talks about the fear of hunger. So you have to be able to know how to fast. Then he talks about avoiding women of a certain age. So you have to be free of lust. And it really is almost like the restrictive law of Muridism. It gives you the framework to have the perfect adab in Islam on your way to Iman and Ihsan. So I went past my point. I'm going to stop here. Close out with any questions. I know we did more of a review, but we're going to finish up dealing, yes, as above, so below. Alhamdulillah. Very well put. That is absolutely the case. Any more questions, comments, or so forth? Tonight's subject wasn't as energetic as the last, but as we close this up, because now we only have one more week. Next week, we're gonna do some more handouts where we're gonna talk about people that ate less, following this line of teaching from Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba to speak less, sleep less, eat less, and then of course I add pray more. We're going to talk more about this. We're going to use examples of it as we close out our Kun Kaatiman class. So is there any more questions, comments, observations? Assalamu alaikum, Brother Kadim. See Brother Kadim in the building.
Wa alaikum assalam. What are my
How you feeling, beloved?
All right, can't complain.
Alhamdulillah.
Doing good.
Yes. Feeling good like Allah always should?
Indeed.
Indeed. Yes. So I can imagine Brother Kadim is he's the scientific one, but he be in the back of the class formulating rebuttals and stuff for me. So I could always see his face smiling when I'm saying something, because he's thinking of, just different ways to sharpen, they say still sharpen steel. And that's how we should be. We should be approaching these as scientists. Sheikh will say something, it'll give me a million ideas, like, oh man, what if we did this with that side of that? That's how we should be thinking, because this is the way that we show and prove. We have to prove the mathematical theology of the power of what we've been given by Kadim al-Rasul. And so If that means, hopefully I'm inspiring some ideas. You may want to go on a fast for a couple of days, rent you a hotel room or something, go somewhere fast, take a Astaghfirullah bihi with you, take Kun Kaatiman with you, and say, I'm going to just do this kasai the whole day. Just water, and I'm eating Astaghfirullah bihi. That's my food, gonna be my food for 2 days. Just play around with it. What could it hurt? It could only help. Because it's going to purify your physical body. It's going to deposit the seeds of the words of power of it in you. And it's going to make a dab that you don't even have to work for. Think about that. The kasai is a sheikh. We don't even have to work for it. All we have to do is memorize it and let it download itself into us. That's all we have to do. Thank you for your attendance, Brother Kadeem. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Sheikh
Always,
Sally.
I'm soaking it in.
Alhamdulillah. With Sheikh Sally, it ain't the same if you don't say nothing, Sheikh. What's going on? I know you got some light to drop. Come on
I'm
with
here.
it.
I'm loud. I'm here. I'm very attentive. I ain't gonna say I talk so much. I was just listening in.
Oh no. Yeah, we got to get something from you today, Sheikh. You always have some jewel you can drop on us.
What I can say about Kun Kaatiman, man, I've been listening to the Kasai, and I can just bear witness to what you've been saying about the Kasai. Like when the brother had come in and was asking you the question. I won't say I was feeling the same way, but I remember the answer. I've been listening to the Kasai when it said about the food and money. And for me, like I say, the Kasai that the brother had spoke on, not the hunger part, but like you say, my provision. That you should be hunger like, well, my Razik, I'm used to making this much a day, and it's supposed to be like that. And you can't, not saying I've had actually fear of it, but that whisper, that nod, or that you this. I'm like, hold up. And I hear your voice from it. Always, you're not dealing with words of description.
Yes, that's right.
Don't get caught up in the lower self.
That's right.
Whisper, put that compass around your passions and desires, how your passions and desires around that place where Allah dwells close within the jugular vein, within the heart, to do the will of Allah. These situations, they're just situations. Like Sheikh Zulu say, La ilaha, la ilaha, everything is fake. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha, la ilaha, everything is fake. They make it plain so a baby can understand. Allah is the only. So, Kun Kaatiman been, like I said, I listen it. I've been doing the 55. It's been having me bringing a certain salams like a surety. Because like you like say, for the more, almost like we said, if you can't do this, you need to just go back and do something else. Not saying I was feeling like that. You done came this far. Like you said, we got knowledge of self so early, 14 and 15 like that. The race is for who can endure. So if you done do it this far, like Sheikh Kadeem Rasul say, go back and review your studies constantly. Go back. Like Sheikh Sufi say, see, I'm gonna shut up now. He'd be like, we have to hear it over.
Teach, Sheikh.
Over and over again. And like y'all would say, iron sharpeneth iron.
That's right.
If you can't control your man, okay, stop for love and life.
Man, Sheikh is overflowing with wisdom. You muted, Sheikh.
Oh, and I was saying, I'm just sitting in the backyard, but give thanks. Kun Kaatiman is definitely, all the Kasais, but it's such a short Kasai too.
Yes.
Right to the point.
Absolutely. Right to the point.
Like you said, if you're doing harm to people and not doing the will of Allah, you won't even good. And like my grandfather would say, is putting the hammer on the nail.
Absolutely.
Give thanks.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for that, Sheikh Sally. My alike Sheikh.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
The Brother Rabah says the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's Eat to Live is so futuristic and right on time. Can you briefly touch on the Navy bean? Absolutely. How to Eat to Live is beyond future. It's like, man, futuristic, yes, at least. I mean, you know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Master Farah Muhammad and San Camille, who taught him, gave him stuff that wasn't even on nobody's mind yet. You're talking about don't eat the soybean, the flour, or the oil. This is before the soybean was even part of the American diet. Now soy is in everything. And and we could do the science on that. So Beloved asked me to touch on the navy bean. The navy bean is really the perfect food for the time that we're in for many reasons. It's also the perfect food nutritionally because it has the majority of the bodybuilding components for the DNA. It has all of the components for DNA repair because it's the highest food source of a nutrient called iodine. Iodine, you've heard of iodine in the use of table salt. They started adding iodine to table salt to make sure Americans were getting it. Okay, but that's not an organic iodine. It's an inorganic iodine that they've added. But they were onto something in knowing that iodine was needed. Now, it's interesting they use it in salt because one of the ways that they found out about that is because naval soldiers on the ships out in the water, a lot of times, they would get the water on their bodies and they would get, salt because mostly the salt is in the water. But they were eating the white bean. This is where that bean got the name navy bean, because they were eating the bean. That white bean was actually the staple of the U.S. Navy at one time. Okay, that in conjunction with the salt that was coming from the water, with all of the 72 trace minerals are in there, was keeping them alive and vibrant and so forth. Now, Insan Kamil Masfarah Muhammad is the one that gave us the navy bean. And Elijah Muhammad said he prescribed no other bean really but the navy bean. The navy bean was the bean that, peace be upon her, Sister Mary Islam was the one that took the navy bean and made it into what we know as a bean pie today. That was designed by a sister in the nation, okay? Because we were trying to substitute the sweet potato that he had taken away from us. But the navy bean is full of DNA repairing components. As every day you have cellular growth, cellular decay. Every day you have new cells that are growing, right? Cells that die every day, cells that grow. But the cells that grow only grow to the effect of how clean the body is, because sometimes as the DNA is repairing, if the DNA is distorted by waste, it can't command the new cell to develop properly. So it's almost like, what is a good way I could describe it? It's almost like you're making a copy of something and the lens is dirty. So the copy is going to come out distorted. So it's the same way. If the cells are not clean, if the blood is not clean, when the DNA is telling your cells for tomorrow to rewrite, it can't rewrite it in a new way because its vision is thrown off. So this is what we call aging. Aging is really a disease because there's no reason to age. If you have cellular decay every day, cellular growth, as long as you're eliminating the old cells, the new cells should come back new. So this is why Elijah Muhammad said one of the promises that Insan Kamil Masfarah Muhammad gave us was that we would take on the age of 16 and we would look like that forever if we followed the diet that he gave us. Why? Because the navy bean cleanses the intestines. Look at these properties. I want to give a shout out to I almost insulted him, the person that gave all of this description of the navy bean. He was trying to attack How to Eat to Live. I ain't gonna say who it is. But he was criticizing the navy bean. And he was saying, they keep making a big deal out of the navy bean. The only thing the navy bean does is blah, 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 blah. And this is what he said. The navy bean, all it does, now, Dr. Detox students, those of you all that got the eye of Darrah, listen to this next statement. You all are gonna start laughing when I say this. He said, why is Master Farah Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, making such a big deal out of the navy bean? The only thing the navy bean does is cleanses the colon, the digestive system, and activate the lungs. The only thing it does is cleanses the digestive system and activates the lungs. The only thing it does? We just talked about the importance of staying empty so that the blood is, the life force can travel, and the importance of breathing so that you can breathe in prana and extra nutrients out of the atmosphere like the masters. So the navy bean makes you do both of these, and that's all it does? Well, we thankful that that's all it does, brother. But it does way more. It has all of the amino acids. Well, the majority. It has over 80% of the amino acids that we need. And when you eat it with whole wheat bread, the other amino acids are in the whole wheat bread. So he said, if you eat the navy bean with whole wheat bread, it's a complete meal. You literally could live off of that indefinitely. The navy bean, Master Farah Muhammad said he could take a child as a baby, feed it nothing but the navy bean, and that baby would live to at least 300 years. At the youngest, 240 years. The navy bean is that powerful because it repairs the DNA. So as the cells are when the DNA is writing the new cell, the navy bean gives it the ingredients to write it more perfectly. So it's a life-building, life-giving food. The iodine in it protects from the damage of radiation. And you know that we're under attack from radiation all around us in these light bulbs, and these wires, these phones, the laptops, the wires in our cities, some of the wirings in our house. We're being bombarded every day with radiation. Every day. There's nothing you can do about it. If you live in America, that's happening to you every day. So the radiation destroys DNA. When you have iodine from the navy bean puts a shield around the cells so the DNA does not get damaged. So it's like so it's almost like the navy bean is putting a coat, almost like a bulletproof vest on the DNA, so it doesn't get damaged from radiation. How did Master Farah Muhammad know that 100 years ago, that we was going to be so bombarded with radiation damage from the technological developments that we were needing? Maybe this is why he was calling him the best known. Interesting. He knew these things. The navy bean is a life-giving food. Yes, alhamdulillah. Thank you for that question. You started something else, beloved. You started something with that. Everybody knows that's my favorite subject. All praises due to Allah. Sheikh Sufi named me Sheikh Farad for a reason. Alhamdulillah. So, yes, the navy bean cleanses the digestive system, activates the lungs, gives you all the amino acids when eaten with whole wheat. It has all of the right amount of fats, sugars, starches, everything. So it's literally a multivitamin. It has the right amount of proteins. Iodine protects the cells from radiation damage. And that's just one of the many things. You know, there's going to be more and more and more and more things come out. But it's literally a life-giving food. You could eat that and nothing else, and you will live. Hopefully I answered your question or something like that. I do. Yes, Sheikh Sally. Yes, sir.
And this Sheikh Mustafa, when you first started the class, he had called me and told me to look up a hadith. And I have to hadith in the spirit of our beloved Atman Sheikh Mustafa.
Yes.
Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, has said, eat right, but do not be excessive, for Allah does not love those who are excessive.
Excessive, yes.
That's 731 from the Quran. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, said, the son of Adam does not fill any vessel worse than his stomach. It is sufficient for the son of Adam to eat a few mouthfuls to keep him going. If he must fill up his stomach, 1/3 food, 1/3 drink, 1/3 air. I just wanted to share that because Sheikh Mustafa had told me to find something that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. And we know Kadeem Rasul, Sheikh Amadou Bamba, filled with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Nur Muhammad. So I just wanted to go into Muhammad of 1400 years ago, peace and blessings. The day who spoke English, he made it clear on what food or what we should eat. With that, I'm gonna say
Absolutely. Well, by Allah's grace and our example and this display of the Fordaniya order of Islam, the Fordaniya order of Murids, you will see a living example of this and the miraculous power that comes from when you put this diet of Insan Kamil Master Farah Muhammad with the Kasais of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. This is when I want to be, the scriptures say, what man have a light and hide it under a bushel basket. I want to be the living example of this for you all. I'm making myself the scientific experiment of this. And to show and prove it, the Asiatic, the indigenous way is to prove truth by living it. So, you know, we want to be living examples. Like I say, all of us should be praying on the Atlantic Ocean if necessary. Not just reading and cheerleading. Kadima Rasul talking about it. He wanted us to do it. He wanted us to be his vessels. And Master Farah Muhammad said the same thing. I didn't come to make worshipers. I came to make gods. I didn't come to just for y'all to come give me praise. Giving me praise is not bad. I'm not saying that. But that's not what he wants. He wants us to exemplify, because in the ancient way, worship is to embody. When you worship somebody, you are them. You be them. You have to love somebody enough to become them, meaning not like a fake, like a copycat imitation, but an emulation in the supreme way of annihilation. That's what we call it in Sufism. You annihilate you, the personality, and let the divine being take over and live. So, how many of us want to be the houses of this divine light? This is the question. And if we do, and we should, then we need to clean house and make preparation for the new furniture of Allah to come in. We need to be prepared for a new renovation. But understand that the fear of hunger, whether it's the fear of hunger of food or the fear of sustenance, like you just said, both of those apply. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. I think the fear of food part shows up a lot quicker because a lot of times we eat emotionally. So a lot of times we're eating as a sedative to, you know, help us deal with the fear of these other things. So if you could overcome the fear of food, the sky's the limit for you. You know, I have a saying that I coined that the easiest way to get a meal is to not need one. You get more offers for food and stuff when you're not eating. What if somebody told the homeless person that? Just fast, bro. Stop. You ain't got to beg. Just go on a fast. Watch how full you're going to be. Because you're going to set a law in motion. When you take advantage of that emptiness instead of crying about it, the universe does something differently with you. And this is what our beloved Kadima Rasul was teaching us. So I'm going to stop. Y'all didn't. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Rabah, for that question. But you started something. You ignited a fire, and I got to make sure it goes on because we'll be on for 3 hours. Yes. Yes.
Did you say the Navy being? I know something about it, but did you say I knew it cleansed the colon, and I knew that you said do what for the lungs?
It activates the respiratory system. It actually activates the lungs. If you look at it, it's shaped like a lung.
That's deep because Master Fard Muhammad, we did it really was 154 lessons. But you know, some
Right.
people say problems. LOL.
Yeah. Yes.
Stop.
Right.
But
Right.
he talked about the breathing.
Yes.
You know, it made me think of a brand. When I see you sometimes, remind me of a brand Nubian song. It was like, the devil bored us, taught us how to eat the wrong food. And now it's life of a laugh.
Yes.
So I was
Yes.
just wondering, you said, the breathing, breath, and then the cleanliness. Man, that's wow.
So he gave us a food to help us attain it, and then mentioned it in the problem book. Yeah, about the breathing. The man breathed so many breaths per. Then he even weighed the air. He breathes this amount of air, which weighs this much. Somebody is an absolute fool to exclude that from the lessons, brother. Like, you're gonna, how could you not think that was supreme? Like, I mean,
I guess we'll give him a break when the father had already left. They said when the problem book had dropped though, but it was like a joke. An older guy that was in the temple with him, I asked him, was like, putting the I won't dare. They say the problem book came. He said, brother, I don't have no problem.
yeah, okay. In a mathematical way, I would argue that the rest of us, we got a lot of problems.
So indeed, but 154 is a high science number. 120, but 154 is another class for another time. I know you might teach us on that one day.
Yes. I would love to teach on the 154. Absolutely. Yes. And there's science to that 120 too.
True indeed.
Yeah. So we'll teach on all of that. If Cheikh give me the opportunity, I would love to teach on it.
You're the head of the party in order, so in due time, everything.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah. And we invite you all, as we start doing the Fordania lectures, please attend and bring your questions and your attention. We would love to have you. We'll start sending out the Zooms not long from now. All right, family. Well, thank you so much. I pray that somebody gained from some of that. At least a little bit.
One more thing, Cheikh, before you go from Kaatiman and family.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yes.
Part about, as I kept listening to it, the worries and problems went away because I happened to be listening to it outside while the birds chirping. I said, I was like, you know a lot closer than the jugular vein. You know you the temple. Don't be deceived by that whisperer, because actually, if you seeking, everything that's gonna fall into place really is perfect. Man was created in haste. Slow down. Man is the secret of God. Tune in and breathe. I'm going to get my bag of navel beans, inshallah, tomorrow. Love and light, family. I talked enough. Stop a lot. Take far, we can't hear you. Ooh.
Assalamu alaikum. Look like we briefly lost Sheikh Farad to some Zoom technicalities. Hopefully he'll be chiming back in shortly. Everybody good?
You think the universal snoopers, Sheikh Idris Bar, chimed in?
I'm standing in your light, Sheikh Sally. Standing in your light.
Remember the message said the universal snoopers always listening in.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Sharif Alu, Imam, beloved Sheikh.
آمين. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
I'm gonna double back on what you was mentioning, Sheikh Sally, about Kaatiman. To me, it's very much descriptive of a Kasad for the Moritz, because it's real common with common truths. So it's like a common truth for the everyday Morit to practice in simple terms.
It's like that. Give thanks.
This is indeed true. No matter how deep this Arabic language is, especially in the way that Sheikh Ahmed Bamba composed it, which we can probably go layers and layers and layers and layers in on it. It's such a beautiful revelation to be able to get it in such a way that we can understand it over here and use the same thing that we're understanding as an isthmus or a land bridge to connect to what's on the inside, inshallah.
Mm. The living Kasad of Kaatiman.
That indeed. And if I'm not too sure, Sheikh Wali had some technical difficulties, but I keep this one saved too as a just in case. And since it's only 8 lines split in half, inshallah, we can recite it once and can close up, inshallah. If all in favor, say who.
Ooh.
Even the dog said it. Come on, look, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. Come on. Oh, ya Allah. Sometimes the universe be the biggest practical joker. Just people be afraid to laugh at the jokes. I swear. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله وهو العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. First line 2 times. Kun katiman liduri wal busatanal kastan wa tahlul jilaya mutahalimu. Kun katiman liduri wal busatanal kastan wa tahlul jilaya mutahalimu. La tuksiri shawqa fakun mutajalidan hatta tazunan nasu annaka muhamu. Fahimlu ya yukta liman yaksha tawan bal rabbuna haddan saburan yulhimu. 7. Dawim hala darsil hulumi muttalihan ya wahya timsin littawa yattajamjamu la tastaghil bi rizqi iz rabbul wara mutakafilun rizqal lazi yatta'alamu waqshal ila lidinihi muttahafizan إذ لا ينال الغلم حاص مجرم نع الكواهب والغواني واختزل إن تدنو منها من ردا لا تسلم لا تشتري الدنيا بأخرى يا فتى من بها نورا بالدجى فسيندم. Always hide you who are in search of knowledge, so you will spare you the trials and the sentences. Have determination, and you will exceed your generation. Do not complain all the time of the events that overwhelm you. Be brave and act so that people believe that you are lacking for nothing, because science is never granted to anyone who fears hunger. Know that God raises his servant who demonstrated patience. You who want to acquire knowledge, review each time, every time. I pity the one who, you who are looking to know, do not look money at the same time, because the Creator provides for the needs of one who is in search of knowledge. Fear Allah and follow his religion, which is Islam. For whoever disobeys God and the one who hurt others never will own knowledge. Getaway girls in age to be married and those that are already married. Approaching them leads to contempt, disobedience, and destruction. Do not sacrifice the hereafter for this world, O son of Adam. So it is clear that whoever exchanged light to darkness will regret it. These are all great blessings and consides and instructions brought to us by the blessings of Kadim Rasul, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. May Allah forever and forever protect his secret, because his secret lies within each and every single one of us, because he prays for us in almost every single one of his sides. I mean.
Cheikh. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Well, I would like to always close us off to clear our slate in terms of sins with a recitation of Astaghfirullah Bihi, if that's okay. Or did you already do the final closing out of prayer?
Oh no, we're missing the Astaghfirullah Bihi and Fatihi to close it up. Can't close it without Fatihi.
Amen. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barik ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa taqabbal minni liwat hikal karimi kali taibani leka bi astaghfirullah bihi. Astaghfirullah halazima wa atubu ilayhi min zawahirin wa min guyub. Sa'altuhu bihaqi wa tilahi makfiratan min jumlatil manahi tubtulahu min jumlatil sagairi mahal kabairi wa min damairi afiru likfu kulli ma takarama wa ma takara wa ma bainahuma wa imni ali wa zidni wa hamalan wa abadan wa fama wa rabbi alikshifu hulaman nafiha wa jal hayati min shaka'in maniha ikshifliya asa'ara wa gawmira ikiraman kashafa siran gamira Lejma Jamiha Ma Tuparakalada, Kaatiman Al Kedi Wasafil Kalada, Lakut Lada Tupakarula Zamaya, Rabi Bikum Tasiman Kalamia, Ablia Yakuramu Fetilawa, Kairan Kasiran Mikawa Halawa, Barukli Allahuma Piayati, Batalfu Adiwa Tanawa Yati, Ablia Kani Bishwa Kuliman Yatu, Balizawa Ahira Adin Mahal Gayu Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi. Rabbil alamin arrahmanir rahim maliki yawmiddin iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in ihdinas siratal mustaqim siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Salatu Fati. Allahumma ya karamu salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad Fatihi limuglika wa Kaatimi limasabaka Nasiru haki bahaki wa hadi ila siratika mustaqim wa ala alihi hakakarihi wa migzari al-azim. Allahumma asli ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma farij ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma irham ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma asli ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma farij ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma irham ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma asli ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma farij ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma irham ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah, we thank you for this opportunity to meet and to sup on the wisdom that you have granted to Kadim Rasul in the form of his Qasaids. We pray for our beloved Cheikh on his journey and his endeavors to go get more knowledge to come and to make masters out of us, that we may exemplify the example of this teaching in the West and in the world. We thank you, and I pray for an increase of station on all of those in our Darrah, all of those on this call,
And I pray for continual protection around those, and that we will increase our desire for the practices, and that our Makam may be raised. In your most holy, righteous name, and in the name of our Master Muhammad, Barke Serene Salihu, Barke Sheikh Ibrafal, Barke Kadim Rasul, Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam, Cheikh.
And remember,
Walaikum salam, Sheikh.
to feel good like Allah always should. Until next week, our last and final week. Tune into the Dr. Detox portal. I love you all. I'm going to finish out my homework. Keep me in your doors, because I definitely can feel them and can use them. May Allah bless you all.
Peace to the God.
Walaikum salam.
Peace. Walaikum salam.
Keep the beads moving.